This is Ed Rigsby. Hello. Hey, for those of you, as far as the professional speakers and the trainers and all you folks out there that want to sell your services to trade associations, I'm pretty excited because Cara Silletto is on with me today. And, you know, if you've ever wondered about how do you sell from the inside, I mean, if you really, really want to understand the inside workings, Cara is a speaker and an amazingly successful one. And her background is she used to be the person that booked people like you. So with that, Cara, let's jump right into it. And let me ask you a question. So in your days of booking professional speakers, what was the thing that bugged you the most about working with speakers?
Oh my goodness. There's a fine line between persistence and just annoyance. And so I think something to keep in mind is just know that a lot of the event planners at associations, they get bombarded with speaker calls and emails. And so just be respectful of their time. And also, the first time I reach out to someone, especially if I'm going for a keynote, I do not send them all of my stuff. Well, here's what I talk about, and here's a link to this, and all of that. I ask, when do you book your speakers? Because if they're not in speaker selection mode right now, there's no reason to bombard them with that type of stuff. And so as the event planner, I'd much rather you respect my time and my calendar and say, when do you book speakers? And I say, in September. Fantastic. I'll reach out to you this fall and we can see if what I do might be a fit for your next event. Right. So I think that was one of the most frustrating things is when, especially if they would call and not ask me, do you have time to talk right now? And just
Sure.
blah, 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 blah.
So, Cara, that leads me into one of the things. In my selling to associations work, I spend a lot of time talking to speakers about, finding the true decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that we all know that, the MPI people, meeting professionals international, they're the more the logistics people. Not many of them are decision makers. The PCMA, professional convention management, they tend to be more the decision makers. So from your perspective, and in a couple of minutes, we can talk about state versus national associations, but from your perspective, both when you were a planner and now that you're a very successful speaker, what would be your thoughts for professional speakers in finding out how to determine who the real decision maker is?
Sure. So it really depends on if there is an education committee that is choosing the speakers, and also is that committee, is it more like volunteer run, such as the SHRM chapters, the Society for HR Management, or is it more staff led? And then how involved is the executive director in the selection of speakers? So I really find that it can vary, but it's based primarily on the size of that association. So if it is a national association, that's going to be different than if it's the state one. And how many staff they have versus volunteer run events, if there's like a chair of the conference. And so sometimes I will have a relationship with somebody that's a volunteer of the 2018 conference, and they have nothing to do with the 2019 conference. And in those cases, you have to just kind of be at the right place at the right time and get in front of that person. But if you go with events that have paid staff, and have paid the event planners or education director and executive directors, you can actually build a long-standing relationship with those people where you can come back again year after year. Or if you're shortlisted one year and don't get selected, you're more likely to be shortlisted the next year because they remember that you were at the top of the stack the year before. So that's one of the big differences, is whether they have paid staff or not. So yeah, and then of course, as you mentioned, it definitely depends. It's different at the state versus national level, I find, as well, as to who the decision makers are. At the state level, I really do find that the event planners are the ones who book us the most. And those are the ones that we personally build a relationship, me and my marketing and salesperson. we build a relationship with them over time, and they will often call us and ask us to come back the next year, or to build a new program for them, or if they have a topic they're missing, hey, Cara, do you know somebody who speaks on this? Because I know you're connected out in the speaking world. So I have found that the event planners and sometimes the executive directors get involved, but that we really have been able to be successful at getting those engagements with the event planners. But each group is different.
Great. So let's talk about the state associations just a little bit. You had mentioned to me before we started the recording that you prefer the state associations. And let me ask you a couple questions about the state associations. As far as, do you find that, you'd made a comment that, I get one booking and I'm going to get 49 more. My experience is a little bit different. And I want you to educate me here if my experience isn't correct. My experience has been that there's generally only a handful of state associations in any particular industry that actually have the speaker budget. And, we can actually, there's no antitrust issues here. So we can actually talk about, okay, well, let's see, Ed, in my experience, I've noticed that most of the state associations have a keynote speaker budget of 1 to 5,000 or 5 to 10,000 or whatever. So it's okay for us to talk. And if you could just address a little bit for somebody that's sitting there thinking, okay, I like the state association idea. It's maybe it's even more of a soft underbelly rather than trying to get into these nationals. How do you go from state to state? What kind of budgets do they have? Give me the lay of the land on state associations.
Yeah, and you are totally right, and I will be perfectly honest with you. Once you go above being a $5,000 speaker, the state association route is going to be really tough for exactly the reason that you said, of there aren't a whole lot of states that can go above the $5,000 range. So when I did a ton of association gigs, so in 2016, I did 102 speaking engagements, and 80 of those were associations. That was when I was in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. And so that's where you kind of $2,500 to $5,000 is the sweet spot for strong state associations. So I'm not trying to oversell it like, oh, you can go get 80 gigs at $10,000 a pop. That's not going to happen. But I like the state associations. We grew organically. Our company and my speaking business, I started speaking for free 5 years ago, then went to 500, then 1,000, then 1,500, right? I just worked my way up, raised my price every 6 months. And the state associations were the way that I made it to $5,000 early in my speaking career. And so the reason that I like that is because gigs lead to more gigs in the association world. Not only are you getting the people in the audience who then hire you to come in and do their corporate work, their corporate leadership meeting, but then the Ohio event planner will tell the Indiana event planner, and then she tells Michigan, and she tells, in fact, a lot of the associations, they have a joint committee of all of the event planners and then all the executive directors and all the CFOs. They each get together virtually or in person once a year, and they tell each other the speakers that they love, the speakers that they don't love. And I'm going to tell you right now, they will tell other people your price. So fee integrity is critical at the state association level, because as soon as you tell one person that you're $3,500 and another person you're $4,500 for the exact same speech, you could get blacklisted. That's not cool, So the reason that the state associations worked very well for us is because we were able to get multiple states. As soon as one state liked us, we asked that state, would you mind sending an email out to the other states that you know very well and just recommend us? And then we started getting calls and more calls. And it really works well when you hone into 2 or 3 industries. If you're going to try to be all things to all people and go, healthcare and manufacturing and, education and professional services, and you want to speak to everybody, then it's a little harder to do that. So what we did is half of my business is healthcare and senior care in particular. I came from the nursing home world, assisted living. And so we have just done, I think, over 40 states of those associations because word travels, they know us, we've customized our content a little bit for them. And then the other 50% of my business is more industry agnostic, where we just take what comes in and somebody heard us here and recommended us into a different industry. That's fine with me. But as far as associations, we don't just cold call into random associations. We go into where we know that world and where they're going to like us and introduce us to the next group and the next state down the way.
You mentioned cold call into the industry. It'd be fascinating. Everybody skins the cat differently. Everybody tries to go to market.
Oh yeah.
So okay. Now you speak on reducing employee turnover. So that could resonate in quite a number of industries. But let me ask you this. Tell me your process of when you identify an industry or an association that you want to sell to. Kind of give me the ABC of your sales process, what you do, maybe what your staff does, and how you go about, making the sale. I mean, let's face it. As you said, once you get in and speak, then it's real easy to leverage, but there's going to be people watching this video that they're just trying to figure out how to get some of their early sales. So how do you cold call? How do you get in? How do you actually get the booking?
Sure. So we have done some cold calling in our past 5 years, but really we just believe gigs lead to more gigs. And so we would do events for free. Even today, I will still do events for free if I think it is getting me in front of the right audience, or it's going to be a fantastic video, right? I mean, there's other value besides just the speaker fee. And so I will sometimes do those engagements because it's the right group. And if I'm trying to get into a new industry, we actually do, because of fee integrity, I'm very serious about being fair, but I do offer an industry entrance discount. So if it's my first time, I'm trying to break into the CPA societies or something like that, then I will give the first group, and I tell them, I'm going to give you our industry entrance discount, and I'll do it for half price or something like that, because I need a testimonial in that space, and I need, some evaluation forms to quote, or just to make sure that my material's good, that those people laugh at my jokes, right? Because I don't know yet if I haven't gone into that group. So for me, when we were first going into those groups, it was just, how can we get on the platform? How can we get a breakout session? How can we get in some way? And then we will get the testimonials, maybe even a video, even if it's on your own phone or a friend comes and videotapes you. So whatever you've got to do to just get started. And that's why we haven't gone until now. I mean, we're just starting to get noticed by some of the national associations, but that's why we started with local chapters and then went to state chapters and regional chapters and kind of grew organically. And that really, really worked for us. The key is, though, let me put a caveat here. If you're getting started, you have to be good. Because if you are not getting at least 2 leads out of every single speech you're giving in an association space, your speech isn't good enough yet. Or you're not, maybe the speech is funny, but you're not spinning it to make sure that people want to continue working with you. You're not giving them the bait of, well, when I work with other leadership groups, they have had these kind of struggles that we've worked on. You have to drop some of those things into your speech. So work on those things and also continue to work on being a better speaker. But if you start doing local chapter events and then state chapter associations, even for free or $500, it should start to snowball and lead to that. I'm I'm not going to lie. It took me 3 years to be financially successful in the association space. So it was not, oh, I'm just going to start calling associations and getting booked at $5,000 a pop. Like, that was not my story of success. What do they say? Like, it took me years to become an overnight success, right?
Sure.
So it took a lot of free gigs and a lot of work and a lot of relationship building that now we don't cold call associations anymore. That we have 90% inbound leads that, we're just saying, yes, we have that date
Sure.
available and let's talk budget, right? But it took years to get there.
So now that you've moved from beginner to, let's say, mid-career, because my guess is, if you mentioned earlier a $5,000 fee, my guess is if you're at a $5,000 fee now, you're probably aiming to be at a $10,000 fee in the next 5 years. So let's talk about speakers that have been out there for a while, that have been speaking for 5 or 10 years, that are they've been doing maybe more corporate stuff. A lot of speakers, some industry loves them and they go, mine that industry until they play it out. And, somebody just says, they're sitting there all of a sudden, my business isn't what it used to be. I need to, get into association. So let's talk about, the people that are in this, let's say between $5,000 and $10,000 fee, that range. What's your advice to them with associations? Is your advice stay away from the state associations? Is your advice go to the national? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I have a unique business model as a speaker. So once I surpassed the $5,000 range, I knew that if I was going to keep serving the associations, I had to have another option. So I hired a full-time trainer, and she is at the $3,000 to $5,000 range now. And then I am up between the $5,000 to $10,000 range. And so some of the states can do that. There, the New Yorks and the Texas and Californias and things, some of the state associations will have a big enough budget to get a $7,500 or $10,000 keynote. But here's what happened. I'm going to be totally honest with you.
Well, that's good.
And this as a warning to others. I've even shared this story with a few other speakers that are asking for the same advice. So early in my association career, I was raising my prices every 6 months by between $500 and $1,000. Okay. And I did that all the way up to $5,000. Then I had somebody tell me that there is no middle ground between $5,000 and $7,500. So you need to just make the leap. Like, don't do 6,000, just go straight from 5 to 75. I did that with associations and business tanked. Because exactly what you're saying. Now, I focus on the state associations. And remember, I've got calls coming in from Wyoming and Oklahoma and all these calls coming in. And as soon as I started quoting 7,500, that was the end of the discussion. There was no negotiating. There was no, that's a little outside our range. It was like, oh, okay, we can't afford you. So they didn't even want to talk anymore. So we actually had a down period in our association bookings because we reached too far with that particular target, right? Again, we were just targeting the state associations that were calling in, and other states had told them that I was 5 or maybe 555 or something like that last time they called. And when we made that jump last year, I learned the hard way that is like a tipping point for a lot of the states. So what we've done now is I actually brought my state association rate back down to 6 because I know that I'm going to spin off business from that engagement. And I know that anybody who knows me, I promise they'll tell you I'm not an egomaniac, but I do know that I'm better than the $5,000 range as a standard. Okay. So I charge 6,000, even though I know most of the associations are going to try to negotiate me down to 5, right? But I quote 6 because I want them to see that there's extra value there and that, wow, well, she really is better than the other people they're quoting 5, that type of thing. So it's kind of a perception type of issue. So now I brought that back for just this year to give it a try. And it seems to be working pretty well that now I'm booking within the 5 to 6 to get back on the association platform. I'm getting more of the keynotes or the full day pre-conference workshops for that price, which give me good exposure. The workshops are great because the people who come to a retention workshop are companies who really have retention problems and want to talk about it in depth and are likely to book me later for consulting or speaking work. And if I'm on the keynote platform, I've got the biggest audience in front of me. So that's a win for me. And then we did the same with my trainer's rates. She had kind of bumped up all the way to the 5,500. And then when I was at 7,500, so we brought both of those down. And now we quote kind of 6 and 4 to 4,500 for her. And that gives us wiggle room. So that happened this past year and I learned my lesson. But when national associations call me, I can easily quote 8 to 10 and not have a problem getting that. Because they have a bigger audience, bigger budget. But I know that I'm only going to get that one gig from the national. I may get spinoff business, from a corporate group that sees me, but I'm not going to get the 30 other states. So I prefer to play the volume game and to have stability in my business by knowing I'm going to get 50 association gigs at this lower price. That's just a personal choice that I have.
Got it. Well, it's very it's fascinating, and it's wonderful your honesty that you're saying, okay, I tried something and it tanked, and here's what I did. I mean, no, that's great because let's face it, in the world of National Speakers Association, there's no lack of ego, and so, so within that, I think a lot of speakers, I live in a glass house, so I'll be the first to cast my own stone. But we work to a certain level, and then it doesn't work, and the willingness to change. Hey, I wanted to take you down a little bit different angle, staying kind of focused on the state thing. Have you had any success working with the state societies of association executives? I mean, because every state has their state society, and with those, the folks that are members of the state societies, most of them are state associations. Some of them are national, but most of them are state. So have you had any success with those organizations? If so, tell me the specific ones. How did it work? Or if you haven't had any success, that's okay too.
Yeah. So I used to be a member of the Indiana Society of Association Executives when I was a meeting planner for a state association. So I was familiar with that group coming into the speaking world. And I have done a keynote for Indiana SAE. I did a keynote for I've done Kentucky and I've done Tennessee. Those are the only 3 that I've been able to do. Most of those groups, the SAE chapters, they want it to be 100% free. They don't typically pay anything for their speakers, maybe a little bit, but not much. And so that was kind of a challenge for me at times. It was like, well, do I pursue those and do them for free or not? I think if you're getting started, try to get in front of those. And I know earlier you said with the MPI chapters, a lot of times it's not the decision makers. I agree. But I would also plan, if you do an MPI event, if it's really good, you should still get 2 or 3 spin-off business gigs from that, even if 80% of the audience isn't the decision makers or is never going to hire you. So we did use both the MPI chapters and the SAE chapters. I'm trying to think. So in Tennessee, I think that's where we had the most success. When I did the Tennessee chapter, we ended up booking Tennessee Concrete, Tennessee Gas, and Tennessee, I know we're in discussions with a couple other groups as well, like fuel and convenience stores and those groups. Then from Tennessee Concrete, we got the Carolina Concrete groups. So we did, just from doing that one Tennessee SAE, we ended up getting 5 or 6 engagements.
So let me back you up. Let me back you up a bit.
Yeah.
And I think this would really be really helpful if you're willing to talk very specific. So, okay, because I think this would really help people to get a handle on it. So you spoke for Tennessee SAE for free. Okay, good. Now, at that time, what was your fee, and what fee were they paying to get into? Because let's face it, Tennessee Concrete is not a huge association, and compared to like Texas and or California or Florida. And I'm trying to get this is such great information, Cara, that to be able to really dig down and drill down and go, okay, guys, here are the actual numbers. So what was going on there?
So, something to keep in mind is the U.S. is gigantic. So, coming from now, I live just outside of Louisville, Kentucky, which is one of the smaller airports. We do have several airlines and a lot of flights every day, but it's pretty expensive coming out of Louisville, and I don't have very many direct flights. The reason I bring that up is because I freaking love to do work in the Midwest because it's drivable or it's close and I can either get back that night to my 3-year-old son or I'm not gone for long, especially if I'm just doing a afternoon half day or something like that, right? So I love to specifically go after Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Illinois we've started going into because those are then drivable for us. And I just prefer that schedule wise. It doesn't waste a day of traveling the day before, the whole day before, like flying. So even though I could go after Texas SAE, that's going to be, and I'm right now deciding about California SAE has their call for presenters out. And I'm trying to decide if I want to do that because if I go to California, that's a 3-day gig. I mean, I got to fly out the day before, do it the day of. And because of the 3-hour time change, there's no way I'm going to get back home that night and have to fly out the third day. So in those cases, I'm going to make a different decision financially. And do I even want to prospect a bunch of groups in California? We honestly have not pursued a whole lot of work west of the Mississippi. Had to think about east west there. Yeah, west of the Mississippi. Because that takes us, if it's Mountain and Pacific time particularly, it takes us an extra day of travel. So we'd rather go East Coast. I've focused much more on doing the East Coast in New England, the Carolinas, Florida. If I am gonna cold call or target associations, I'm gonna target those guys because it's much easier for me travel wise. I've gotten a lot of work west of the Mississippi because of introductions. So the states tell the other states, and then Washington calls and says, "Will you come to Seattle?" Sure, I'll come to Seattle, but I'm not going to go pursue work in Seattle, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a work-life balance thing for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, I remember years ago, Laura Stack in Denver. She used to talk about, working because her kids were young and stuff. Same thing. She talked about working drivable distances. And, years later when her kids were grown, I mean, then she put a lot more energy national. So,
right.
So it's fascinating. Would you say that for speakers that are maybe newer in this game, that, if they stayed local like you're doing, that would serve them? I mean, is that? I guess the question is, it's a question from a different angle. The staying local served you because that was your strategic intent to stay local. However, I also wonder if by staying local, it serves you so more people easier, quicker, faster could get to know you in a local area. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons. The old adage of you can't be a prophet in your own backyard is so true because I can charge 4 times as much when I get on a plane, But what we did, we just grew organically from Louisville. So in 2014, it was almost all local chapters, local gigs. 2015, we got Indy, Nashville, Cincinnati, St. Louis, because people heard about us and would take us to the next chapter over. And then 2016 was when it exploded, and that's when the states started telling each other, and we went coast to coast. I remember that year I spoke in Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine in the same year. So we were joking about like, oh, coast to coast. Okay, good. And then this past year we started doing some international work, and so it has just really blossomed out that way. So my advice is when you're starting, it's just really easy to get local relationships going, but then you want to get out of your hometown as quickly as possible because your hometown wants the friends and family discount, or, well, you could just do that for free, can't you? Can't I call in a favor and have you speak for free? And I still get those requests, right? And sometimes I do to give back to my community, and sometimes I say I can't do that. That's not what I do for a living. And so I would just think about your own goal and where you want to be. If I lived in Denver, I would do work everywhere because Denver has direct flights to everywhere, anytime. And they're a huge airport where Louisville, I have to connect through Chicago or Charlotte or something else. So it's just a headache for me, but I still fly almost 50 times a year. So it's not that I'm not going after that work, but I really love doing when I have Ohio and Tennessee clients that are within a 4-hour drive for me. That's fantastic. I can even take my retired mom along. She comes, sometimes she brings my kid. It's a different thing. So now I'm not trying to avoid flights. I just want to balance the regional work and the national work, so that I'm driving some and flying some. Other speakers have total preferences, like they hate driving long distances or they hate flying or whatever. And so you just have to decide for you who you're going to target and how wide you want to go.
Sure. There we go. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, you've got quite a staff. And a lot of questions speakers have. I'm veering off of the topic just a smidge. A lot of speakers really have a challenge on, where do I find staff? How do I find staff? And you told me that you got 3 full-timers and 3 part-timers. And people are constantly, especially speakers, gee, how do I find staff? I just wanted to ask you, do you find that, well, I'm going to give you several questions and you can answer them whatever you want. But number one, is your staff local or remote? And if your staff is local, do you find that because you're in a small town environment that it's easier to find people? Tell me how you went about building such an amazing organization. I just think that's fascinating.
Well, thank you. It is a very different style than most groups, than most speakers strive for. And I'll be honest, okay. So before I go into this like a fancy staff over here, right? I'll tell you, I personally do not bring home as much money as a lot of other speakers because I delegate everything. I don't want to work nights. I don't want to work weekends besides the travel piece of things. And I get everything off of my plate that I don't enjoy doing as quickly as I can. So the more revenue I bring in, I bring on another staff member. The more revenue I bring in, I bring on another staff member. So I do make a little bit more money every single year, but I am not exponentially growing, my own income. So I just want to be totally transparent with that. And the second piece is my personal goal in life is to create jobs. That is just a personal passion of mine. I want to create, I focus on employee retention. I want to create jobs where people love what they do, love who they work with, love who they work for, love the team, and really are passionate about the work that we're doing as retention experts. So to me, building a team was absolutely a non-negotiable. It was, we will build a team. We're going to build a company that creates a team. And so that's a different approach than a lot of people might want to have. But I can go back to kind of the logistics of how I find people and how I manage them. Even if you want to stay single and solo, but you just want one assistant, I can give you some tips on how to find that and make that work. So my whole team is, most of them are remote. Everyone works from their home. And the way I found my first assistant it was actually someone I used to work with years ago. And I knew she had decided to be a stay-at-home mom. So I called her and I said, hey, you are brilliant. And you don't want to work 0 hours a week, right? Because I knew she had that intellectual side. I mean, she loves being a stay-at-home mom and she's fantastic at it. But I knew that she had those juices, going of like, I'd love to do something intellectual, right? So I hired her for 3 hours a week within the first year of my business. That was it. No, very little commitment. Okay. And because she's a stay-at-home mom, she's not looking for $50 an hour. She just wanted to be 1099, 3 hours a week. I think maybe we started at $20 or $25 an hour. And that was great because she became my boss. I would tell her, make sure I don't miss any deadlines. Make sure I do what I'm supposed to be doing because we all have some procrastination in us. And so she just kind of became my admin / boss, telling me, don't forget to send Max that proposal tomorrow and, that type of thing. And then I increased her hours, and I tend to do something you might want to try if you're going to go this route, is I give them a range, because I don't know exactly how long things are going to take them, and we might have a busy time or a less busy time. And so I started to put her on like 3 to 5 hours a week. So it works for my budget, but it also gives her some wiggle room. Then we went to 5 to 8 hours a week. Then we went to 8 to 12 hours a week. So if there's less work or more work, she could do that. And then if she gets overloaded with work and can't get it done in her hours, she will tell me, hey, Cara, I've already hit my hours for the month. Do you want me to take the last week off, or do you want me to work another 10 hours and get more stuff done? So she would kind of check in with me time wise. I do have all my staff, even my full-timers, fill out a timesheet, and they tell me what they're doing by the hour each day. Some of them think it's a little bit of a pain. Most of them don't mind, but it helps me to prioritize their tasks. And then if they get overloaded, I can decide where to move tasks around, and which things I should just do myself versus them. So know that if you're going to use a virtual assistant that's not local to you, there will be some things that are absolutely impossible to get rid of. So for example, all checks, okay, I've got a team of 6, all checks still come to my house, and I deposit them on my phone every day. That's a job. I can't outsource that because I don't have an external office, and I don't want those checks going elsewhere. So even though I have a bookkeeper, so what I do is I deposit it myself, and then I send her an email. These were the 3 checks I got today. She then puts them in the system and, updates everything and has a spreadsheet and QuickBooks and all that fun stuff. So there are some pieces that you may still have to do it absolutely just yourself because you don't have anyone else around. But almost everything you can outsource today and go national, go virtual, with your staff. So does that help, Ed?
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering. So I'm hearing a lot of speakers talk about, getting help from the Philippines or this or that or the other. Are all of your people within the United States?
Yeah. Excuse me. So yes, we have hired friends of friends of friends of friends.
Got it.
So that's how we find people. When I want somebody, I'm actually a big fan of it's great if you want to put together a job description. James Robillata just put a great one together. Shannon just put a great one together. I've seen some that have been posted on the NSA pages. So if you have an idea, like this is what I need from a person, that's great. I did it a little bit differently, kind of unconventionally. I was like, I need help from a great person. I don't know what I need them to do yet, but let me see what kind of talent I can find. And so I would just ask around and say, does anyone know somebody who's looking for a side job that would be 5 to 10 hours a week, that's very organized or marketing savvy or something, like a general kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then people would come to me and say, oh yeah, I love doing this and I love doing that. And then I would move the tasks around and make it work for whatever great person I found that I want to be on my team.
Are these people mostly close to where you live, or are they all around the country?
No. So I have some folks in Montana, one in South Carolina, Kansas City. My trainer does live here in Louisville with me, which is great because we can collaborate and do things. But if I hire another trainer, I don't want them to be in Louisville. I'm going to want them in a bigger market like Denver or, Dallas or Chicago or somewhere like that for travel purposes. So yeah, my trainer's here. And then I do have one local assistant who stops by my house and helps me organize my office sometimes. And she will make post office runs and things like that. So it's nice having her. But before I had her, I just did that stuff myself.
So interestingly enough, when you talked about you have these people fill out an hourly description. I mean, I think that's masterful in the respect that I get it, that some people would think that's being a little bit picky, but I really never thought about it. I'll tell you honestly, until you mentioned it, that this allows you to prioritize your hours. So talk to me more about, how that works, where they put their hours down, they do what they do, and how you go about reviewing it and prioritizing it. It's just that I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, I sell it to them as it benefits them. because if they don't fill out a timesheet and they tell me at the end of the month, oh, Cara, I mean, I haven't gotten these other 3 things done, my initial response is going to be, well, why not? You've been working all month and you should have gotten them done. You know what I mean? Like, not that I would really be that way, but that's going to be the gut reaction is, oh, you have 20 hours a week. How come you're not getting all this done? But I don't know how long it takes them to do every single thing. And so all they do is it's just a spreadsheet that has every day, and then it's sliced into different categories. So it has like sales time, admin time, travel time, team call time, because we do, obviously, if you grow a staff, you've got to make sure the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. So we have a sales team call every week and a monthly staff call and things like that. And so there are different categories on each person's timesheet. And then they don't necessarily have to clock every single hour, but for the day, they have to say, I spent 2 hours on admin, 4 hours on sales calls, and 1 hour on marketing efforts or whatever, And so then I can see at the end of the month, oh, she only spent 10 hours on marketing stuff and 30 hours on sales this month. Wow, that's because we had a lot of inbound calls coming in and she got pulled from her marketing projects just to answer all these calls and write proposals and things like that. So at the end of the month, then I can talk with her about our percentage split. Because here I'm expecting her to be 50-50 sales and marketing, but she's more like 80-20. And so then do I need to take on the marketing duties that she's not getting to because she needs to be on the phone? Or do I need to help her with some sales calls so that she can get more marketing done? Right. So it's to help her. And also I give people a cap of their hours every month. So that's also to help them, because if I overload it, that's my fault. Because for my budgetary purposes, they cannot go over the max amount without getting approval from me. And that if that means that they don't get all the projects I asked them to do finished, so be it. I didn't give them enough hours to do it.
So let me ask you this. You said sales calls. Is this, but earlier you said you don't do any cold calling outgoing. So am I right to assume that when you're talking about sales calls, that these are inbound calls that people are calling, showing interest? So I'm guessing, or what I'm hearing, that you don't take those calls, that somebody else does. How does that work?
Correct. Yeah. So I have Sarah on my team. We direct everything on our website to her. So it's call Sarah to book Cara or Leah. Call Sarah to figure out what program would be best for you. So most people call or email her if they're coming through the website. On any of our marketing materials. Now, some people will call or email me directly because my name and email is on the handouts and, my book and things like that. It has my contact info. So if people email me, I just forward it to her and say, call Joe. And she takes care of it. If somebody calls me, if I answer, I will do the sales call. I'm prepared. I have done that myself. I'm comfortable with it. So I will take the sales call. I can even close it. But oftentimes it's going to need more than one conversation. It might even need a proposal because we do a lot of training now beyond just the speaking. And so if it's a training package, for example, we're going to need an official proposal written and stuff. So then Sarah and I will collaborate on that. I'll either give her my notes and she writes it up, or I'll go ahead and do the first draft and let her polish it. We kind of tag team that. But I would say probably 80 to 90% of the leads she calls and follows up with. And to answer your question, yes, it's mostly inbound. Sometimes I will see an event coming up and I'm like, Sarah, call them. Go figure out how they book speakers and if they've picked yet and how do I get into that conference? We're so excited. So we do cold call every once in a while via email or phone and, try to track down the right person and get on their radar. But we just don't have a lot of success with that. And I'll be honest, we're not great with search engine optimization and fancy videos and fancy stuff like that. So that's why I'm much easier to get booked from somebody who saw me speak and says, she's a great speaker, versus somebody that says, look at her website. I mean, that's just not going to impress as many people because that's our weakness as a business really. Sure. Is my brand or whatever. And I know it, I own it. So anyway, so yeah, Sarah takes those calls and contacts them, does most of the proposals. The other thing is we have I think I have one right here. If you'll hold on just a second.
Sure.
Yes. Nope, just kidding. Here it is. So we made these little postcards. Okay, so my book came out in March. So this is kind of a book promotion here that says, hey, go get a book and leave 5 stars on Amazon, blah, blah, blah. We put these postcards on every table now. And then on the back side, it says, do you want more information? And so we have a hidden website. You should always give them something for free. And so we have a hidden website that has all kinds of downloadable templates and tools and sample webinars and whatever. And so the first checkbox is, I want all the free stuff. And then the next box is, I want a bulk discount on the book. And the next one is, I need a retention strategist to come work with my team. And those are the hot leads. So that to me is considered inbound, because that's somebody at the gig that said, yeah, I want somebody to come work with my leadership team. So these go to Sarah right after the gig, and then she will call all of those people. And then the last one just says, I'd like more info about blank. And so if they are asking about a specific resource or something, it might be something else. But yeah, this is another way that we get more of those leads and hot leads and kind of inbound type referrals.
So if you've got an audience of 100 people and you put those out, how many people generally give you some kind of response back that causes Sarah to have to make a call?
I'd say 5 to 10.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's a handful.
It's a manageable number.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I usually get about 80% return of the cards. So I'll get about 80% of the audience that wants our free resources and to be on our list and get those things. But then it's only, 5 to 10% would be my guess. I'm trying to think of the last few. Yeah, probably 5 to 10% that check that third box of, I want you to come talk to my team. So yes, it's very manageable. And of those that check that box, I would say we close at least 70, if not 80% of those.
Oh, wow.
Because particularly because we have a specific niche of employee retention that is a pain point for companies, and they need training on it. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, please, how quickly can you get here? Because we are dying of turnover, So I'm in a little bit of a sweet spot here of having a really powerful niche.
So moving back just a little bit. So I love your card. It's very, very cool. And yeah, you're welcome. And it's, so you've taken your book. Is your book hard copy also, or is it only ebook?
It is a physical copy. Okay. Yep.
No, but so the one they get free via that postcard. All right. There you go.
Yeah. The free resources is actually a hidden website that has downloadable things. So that's not our book. It does have our little mini book, which is, you guys have heard of mini book. Yeah. I have a mini book. So they do get the digital version of that for free. They get a downloadable cost of turnover calculator, and some downloadable templates and tools. So that's what we're doing to really draw them in.
When you say hidden website, do you mean you have a complete different URL, or is it a page on your website that's not linkable?
It's just a page, crescendostrategies.com/
something.
Secret word.
But okay, but that, and have you found a way to make that not available to search engines?
So we worked with our marketing or our website company, and we thought about, should it be password protected and this and that? And honestly, I mean, it's just not navigable. Is that a word? So you can't find it in the navigation, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't find it if you're just looking for it on our web page, but it would be searchable by the search engines. But I have gone into the SEO side and taken out you can't take the keywords out if it's listed in the text, but I've changed the headers that says like attendee only resources and things like that people aren't going to Google those phrases.
Got it. So, okay. That makes total sense. Got it. Son of a gun. That's amazing. Hey, you've been amazingly generous with your time, and I could talk to you for several more hours. But I need to be respectful of your time. Cara, let me just ask this as kind of a parting shot. We've chatted about a lot of things. So your thought for a professional speaker that's trying to that's trying to break into the association market, let's say that's been speaking 2, 3, 4 years, what are your top 2, 3, 4 tips, whatever it would be?
I think the number one thing is listen to them, because every program I have ever built came from a request from a client. I didn't just say, I want to talk about this and people should want to hear it. And instead, you can be a lot more successful if you ask the event planner or the decision maker or whomever, whether it's associations or not associations, right? Ask the client, what are you guys struggling with? How would this type of program help you? What are the outcomes that you are looking for to achieve? And then use your expertise and your content to build that program. So listen to that. Take your evaluations very seriously. When I started doing generational work years ago, people told me that I was too one-sided, like, because I came from the millennial perspective, and they said, it sounds like you're boomer bashing and you're too one-sided. Well, at first I'm defensive. No, I'm not. No, that's not what I was doing. But then I thought about it and said, well, if people are perceiving me as boomer bashing, I have to be more careful. I have to tweak my content to where I assure them I'm not boomer bashing and that I'm a little more balanced in my generational discussion. And so that made me a much more powerful speaker and get to the outcomes better, instead of people just crossing their arms like, oh, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I'm never going to get through to that person. So I had to take a different approach. So listen to the clients, listen to the feedback you're getting from the attendees, and keep getting better at what you do, and keep building new programs and new stories and new strategies that you can share that really solve people's problems, not just generic, oh, wouldn't it be nice if everybody knew this information?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fascinating because effectively, I mean, as I'm putting this together, my analysis is you went from zero to hero in 5 years. Is that about right?
I am honored that you said that. I would say the same. I think that we really were able to kind of catapult. I definitely think being an association insider, coming from that world, helped me get there faster. But I also had some other tools and things in my tool belt that helped: networking, relationships. My MBA is where I get that, like, what's the problem? How do we solve it? How much is it costing people? So that helps. And then I have been a professional singer since I was 7 years old.
Oh, really?
So I never had to, when people say, how'd you get into this? Like, don't you have butterflies? I've never had butterflies on a stage because I've been on stage my whole life. And that's I'm blessed to have the singing talent that I have, but it was absolutely a jump starter for my speaking career because so many people have to get past that piece of it. And I didn't have that hurdle to get past. So yeah, I think we have kind of catapulted pretty quickly here in the first 5 years, and we are planning to continue to grow. So watch us, and I look forward to meeting all the other people who are watching this so we can help each other grow our speaking businesses.
That's amazing. So everybody, it's Cara Silletto. Her website is crescendostrategies.com, and she's in Louisville. So around the halls of NSA at Influence or who knows where, you should be able to bump into Cara and go, hey, I watched that video. That was awesome. I learned all kinds of stuff from you. Very, very neat. Well, hey, Cara, I want to say again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ed.